small engine airplane that just landed on I-84.
The training that kicks in when a pilot has to make an emergency landing like this one.
But first, you'll hear air traffic control as they handle the emergency.
This is KBOI 2 News, first at 4.
So imagine this, you're driving to work and suddenly you're sharing the interstate with an airplane. It happened this morning. A small plane makes an emergency landing on I-84. Good afternoon, I'm Brent Hunsaker.
And I'm Natalie Hurst. Now the plane snarled the morning commute for about an hour. We have team coverage of the emergency landing.
Yeah, Morgan Wagner gets a pilot's perspective on what goes on in the cockpit during an emergency. And Jeff Platt lets us listen in on some of the 911 calls from surprised commuters.
But first, Jake Lieber starts our coverage from the crash scene on I-84 near Orchard.
Now, the plane landed along this stretch of I-84. This is near the Orchard exit. That was after an engine failure as it was approaching the Boise airport. Around 7 o'clock Tuesday morning, dispatchers say this single-engine Cessna airplane made an emergency landing on I-84 East in the middle of rush hour traffic.
Native 87-3 Mike's going in on the freeway. Engine failure.
ISP and other agencies say the pilot, John M. Brinkerhoff, was on final approach from Spokane to land the plane at the Boise airport when the plane lost power. Brinkerhoff could not get his landing gear to work in time, but avoided disaster.
73 Mike is on the freeway. Okay. Jerry, 73 Mike is back to hear that. Thank you. We're bringing the crash call emergency vehicle runway.
The FAA released a statement saying local authorities say that only the pilot was on board and he was not injured. The aircraft sustained substantial damage. The FAA will continue to investigate. The owner of the aircraft company told the Associated Press that Brinkerhoff had enough fuel, but forgot to switch fuel tanks and couldn't reach the runway. The plane was towed away later that morning, and traffic resumed to normal. Now, ISP says the plane did not hit any cars on landing. However, a man driving a car that was hauling a boat actually clipped the wing of the plane as it sat on the highway. And that man drove away at first, but he then reported it to authorities afterwards. Live in Boise, Jake Lieber, KBOI 2 News.
Now, a pilot tells us that an engine failure is rare. Even so, pilots must be trained and ready for it.
Morgan Wagner explains the steps pilots go through when they have to make an emergency landing. She continues our team coverage.
One of the biggest challenges a pilot can face in a situation like this involves finding that perfect speed, one that's slow enough to land the plane safely, but not so slow that the plane stalls in midair. It's a decision that a pilot only has seconds to make.
And you've got to react pretty quick to maintain your speed so you don't stall. The worst thing you can do is to stall.
Jim Hudson has been flying for nearly 20 years and has been giving flight lessons for at least 13. Hudson says although engine failure rarely happens, it's something pilots have to be prepared for at any time.
You generally want to go to a speed called the best glide speed, and that's where the plane's going to glide the furthest without power. And then you start looking for a place to land, and you try to find the best place to land. Now, in the smoke, maybe the freeway looked like the best place to land.
And Hudson says you can't practice this enough.
We practice and encourage pilots to practice that a lot at altitude. So, you'll get up to a safe altitude and then pull the power, and then practice going the best glide, practice even landing at an airport, without power.
Landing without power, Hudson says, takes more judgment, like knowing where and when to turn so you can maintain gliding to your landing spot. When it comes to finding the best landing place, Hudson tells us pilots look for hard and open surfaces like a field. Live in the newsroom, Morgan Wagner, KBOI 2 News.
Now here is a quick overview of the type of plane that we're looking at. It's a Cessna 210. The 210 was first introduced back in 1957, but this particular aircraft was built in 1970. It has a cantilevered wing and a single engine.
Our own Roland Stedham is a commercial licensed pilot with 35 years of flying experience.
And we wanted to have him here a little early because we wanted to talk to you about, what goes through the mind of a pilot in a situation like this. I mean, you're on short final, and boom, you've got your propeller stops spinning in front of you.
Well, a couple of things are happening. Number one, you're usually at or below 1,000 feet above the ground. So the time that you have to make a decision, a critical decision, is minimized, and everything is compressed very quickly. Now, Brent, what he did, imagine also, if you will, that it was still pitch black outside, because this happened between 6:30 and 7 o'clock in the morning. The sun doesn't even come up until almost 8 o'clock in the morning. So it was dark, and in a situation where you lose an engine, the first thing you look for is, okay, is there a field I could set the airplane down? But all the fields were completely dark. So the next option is you're looking for something that's well lit. Obviously, he did not feel he had the glide ratio he needed to make it to the airport, so he turned and looked for the next viable option, and that is the best well-lit area, which was a freeway or a road. I probably would have done the same thing in that situation.
According to the charter business that owns the plane, there was plenty of fuel on board, but the pilot didn't select the proper fuel tank, which starved the engine of fuel. So, how hard is it to select that right fuel tank?
That fuel selector valve is right there between the pilot, co-pilot seat, just below the throttle, so it's within an arm's reach. You're supposed to be able to go through a checklist. Checklists are extremely important for takeoff and for landing. And in that checklist for landing, the first thing that you look for is the gas. Where's the fuel selector? In fact, the landing checklist goes like this. We use an acronym called GUMPS, G-U-M-P-S. G, gas on the proper tank, undercarriage 3 dot locked in green, mixture set full rich, prop full increase, seatbelt shoulder harnesses adjusted and locked, boost pump is on, landing light is on. So these are the checklists that you hopefully commit to memory. Obviously, if he didn't select that fuel valve, it was maybe pilot error, which is the majority of the reason why these accidents and incidents like this occur.
And with no time to do anything else, probably why he didn't get his landing gear down.
Exactly.
Just no time.
No time.
We'll see you again for weather.